Dignitas Elevate is the match that we're going to see up next, and Dig trying to bounce back from what has not been a good Super Regionals for them. They've played 4 matches. They've lost 4 matches. What do they need to turn around in particular in this game?
In particular, I really I think that they did make a little bit of a difference with their draft, but I'm not a huge fan of Qvofred trying to pull out like the Najah, for instance. I really want to see him try and avoid the all-in hypercarry assassins for now. I think that considering the junglers that he's going to be going up against, especially Cherryo, who favors those Guardians or the Bruisers, he really needs to maybe try and shift a little bit more towards that direction.
The question is, do they try and fight fire with fire? Because I don't think I've seen Qvofred really favor those Guardian jungles, apart from maybe the Cabrakan themselves. So if they're going against Elevate, I'm looking to see that as an early potential pick for them.
Dignitas trying to bounce back. Elevate trying to do the same, but they had a much better showing against Obey. But in the same sort of vein, I mean, Dignitas has experienced disappointment by not playing up to their level, by not finding a victory quite yet. Elevate had a different type of disappointment where they feel like, you know, they're the underdogs against Obey. No one's really expecting them to do anything. And then that set was really within their grasp. How do you bounce back from something like that, Alpha?
You just have to keep your head in the game going, we could have done this, we weren't expected to, that's fine. We prepared for this inevitability of going down, and we're going to come out strong and show that that just wasn't a fluke. You've got to keep on going with the pace.
I think that's probably my primary concern, though, for Dignitas right now. I mean, we saw what happened last time, I believe, actually. It was last year with Trixtank, Qvofred, that original Orbit roster where they had a little bit of that falling out during the LAN event. And I think everybody in the arena, at least, remembers what the surrounding was like and what the environment was like. The team just continuously stayed off the same page. And so for Dig, they need to just kind of remind themselves that just because they lose a couple of matches there, they still have plenty of opportunities. They still have plenty of talent to bring themselves back into it. This is a very strong mechanical beast team, and I just feel like we haven't seen that from them yet.
To be fair, if I think they lose this game, they can consider their Super Regionals over.
This is going to be absolutely critical for Dignitas and for Elevate, who have to try and find a way to maybe change up what they were doing up against Obey, because the first 3 games were all very close, and many might argue that Elevate should have come out 3-0 in those 3 games. But then they end up changing their draft style a little bit, and it doesn't end up working out for them. Dignitas has got to be aware that Cabrakan is going to be like the pick and ban for this set, right, Taco?
But Dignitas could also just take the Cabrakan for themselves. It wasn't too long ago that Qvofred used to just run rampant with the Cabrakan himself, and I think that that could be a very strong selection, not to mention that you're stripping it away from Cherryo. But for Elevate especially, I just want to see them go back to their bread and butter. Please bring back the Triple Guardian, throw DeathPanter onto a Hunter in the mid lane. There are just so many Hunters that are actually viable in mid lane, especially with the drafts that they're composing, so it's all possible.
I mean, 2 Hunters that are very fine in the mid lane that we haven't seen at all this Super Regionals are Medusa and On Her. Potentially you could look to pick one of those up, especially considering On Her is a god that you pick up on lands because of his Pillar Impale. Very easy to hit that online, offline compared to online.
How about Kernanos? That's a god that was very dominant for a while and kind of has started to creep back into the meta. Seems like a fairly decent pick in the mid lane.
I think it can do well. The issue is that he doesn't offer as much CC as another Hunter like Hui would do. He has that long-distance ricochet opposed to that long-distance root, which can be difficult to hit at times, especially through minions.
So it used to be whenever we're talking about Hunters in the mid lane, it's like Neith and the end. We have not seen any Neith really at all. Why don't we see her if we're seeing Hunters mid?
It all depends. I mean, Neith is just one of those gods where the main reason why you don't really see her, period, is because her backflip just provides way too much punishment. I think most players, especially nowadays, can definitely predict where she's going to land easily enough to just prepare their skill shots upon that designated arrival. But I want to see more of the Chirons maybe, or even the Medusas. I think that Chiron is kind of being a little bit underlooked here, especially for the playstyle that Elevate likes to roll with, because they're all utility based, and I can't think of a Hunter that would provide more to a team fight than a Chiron.
Especially if you're going to be going up against a god like Nox. I don't think Zyrhoes will play it, but if it does come out, Chiron offers that cleanse with his training exercise, along with a Geb. It's just a nightmare to deal with.
Plenty of, it's not plenty, I suppose, but also that little bit of sustain that Chiron can bring with that passive kind of gets overlooked, and sustain is something that has been kind of sneakily involved in these super regionals. Plenty of sustain from Sylvanas being the main support pick for a lot of these players. Are we close? I mean, we saw the Aphrodite for Trifecta. What is keeping these other healers that we used to see, the Guan Yus, out of the meta right now?
Odin. just simply, Odin is still a potentially highly devastating pick for them, and we saw just how well it did yesterday. Yeah. Played a game 1, instantly banned for the next 2.
I'm with him on that one. I think that Odin right now is a particularly strong enough pick that it can keep teams from trying to take that risk-reward factor off the table entirely, because why worry about trying to make Guan Yu be viable in a laning phase where he's just notoriously weaker than a lot of the other solo laners in general when it comes to the lane clear? Because when you're pinning everything onto the team fighting stage, you're not going to really have the opportunities for a team fight if your solo laner's like 3 levels behind within the first 7 minutes.
Dignitas trying to turn their super regionals around. They're 0-4 thus far, and a lot of the onus of that falls upon the shoulders of their mid laner, Zyrhoes. We talked to him earlier on this week. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I've always had my way of doing pick and bans. Like, I feel like I'm usually the guy that has like the most say in the picks and bans in like every team I've been in. And like same when I was coaching Energy, like obviously they didn't agree with everything because they're a completely new team and I've never played with them before. So, but like even then, like I had a big say in like the pick and bans. So, what I pick is usually like it depends on our team comp and stuff. But like usually I like to run a god that I know I will do really well on late game. Fred and Harry, variety. They're both really aggressive. Arkkyl's really aggressive. I feel like everyone from my team is really aggressive apart from me, pretty much. I feel like I'm the most defensive player on the team. Usually new metas, we're not that good in the start. I don't know, we're pretty slow to adapt. But like, we had a boot camp now and I think we learned a lot from that. So I won last year, but obviously it was as coach.
Right.
But like, yeah, it would be nice to win as a player, but I don't know, I don't feel much about it. As long as we don't slip out of the meta or something and like get behind enemy teams. Like the first LAN this year, I felt like back then we were not, like we did pretty well anyway, but like we were behind the meta then in a few things. I feel like we've been feeling the same like when it comes to competition this whole year. Like even after the LAN we lost, like we knew like what was wrong, like what we need to do. So never in pro play and stuff, but like in practice we actually do struggle a bit, like that people probably don't know about. Like sometimes we have like really bad practice, and when we have bad practice it gets even worse. Obviously, we have arguments and stuff sometimes, but like at the end of the day, I think everyone knows in the back of their head that like we are the best and like we can be the best. So.
A lot of the talk coming into this Super Regionals was that Dignitas was the best team in the world right now. How kind of damaging can that be to an ego whenever you feel like, you know, we're going to come in and, yeah, our first matchup's hard, but we should be able to make it past, and now you're 4 games in and you still haven't found a victory?
I think that can be actually really devastating to a team environment in general. Not so much towards the egos, but it just drastically affects the way that a team tries to play out, whether it's in scrims or just in drafting stages. When you're consistently winning, it can be very difficult because you don't necessarily know, did this draft win because it's actually viable and strong, or just because other teams don't really know how to play against us.
And on the other end of the coin, if you're consistently losing scrims or losing matches, you kind of feel, is it the draft or is it us? What can we do to actually win a game? Finally, please, can we please win? It can be good. It can weigh on the mind a tiny bit, but some of the best players in the world, like Dignitas, will cast that out of their minds.
They need to if they want to make it to HRX. They're already behind the 8 ball a little bit, having dropped into groups. We've actually got to look for you here at the bracket for HRX that everyone is trying to get into. This is the HRX main stage schedule for you guys at home. This is the best time of year, man. When we're talking about HRX, getting all these teams ready, you need to be here in Atlanta. You can still go to HRX, the hi-rezexpo.com, and get your HRX tickets there with code SPL25 in order to get 25% off. But this is a Wednesday through Sunday, just an absolute barn burner as always.
I mean, this is absolutely jam-packed with events, and there's just so much that's always going on whenever Worlds comes up. And so it's pretty expected why all of these teams here are trying so very hard to make it their way themselves.
Paladins, Hand of the Gods, Smite, it's all going to be there, and it's all going to be a blast, trust me. And everyone from all these teams are trying to get there without having to buy a ticket. Elevate is one of those teams that many teams may have kind of been like, yeah, they might be able to do something here. But after their performance against Obey, a lot of players are starting to talk about Elevate and their potential to make it Alpha, you were always very confident in this squad, saying that you were scrimming them and Obey Alliance at the same time. What makes them so good?
They just play to their own style and play to a style which no other team really does. I mean, you have a look at the drafts yesterday, the drafts the day before, and the drafts today. Which other team is playing Triple Guardian Double Hunter? Which other team is consistently invading your back camps with a Cabrakan at level 4, even though he sometimes dies for it? Sometimes, but other times it works out. There's just something about them that's unique, and pinpointing that uniqueness can be difficult, as we saw yesterday.
Something that really everything for Elevate revolves around is Cherryo and what he's doing in the jungler. He's a leader for this team and has been for quite some time, even since joining the roster not that long ago. So got a chance to sit down with Cherryo earlier in the week, and he had some pretty interesting things to say.
Well, Dardez thinks we'll get 0-8. We'll lose 3-0 to Obey and then lose all the Gauntlet games. He thinks it'll be funny, but I have more hopes. I think it's like, if we lose first game, we'll lose to Obey. But if we don't, I think we'll win. It's not like a gameplay thing, it's just motivation-wise. Like Jermain and Dardez had a lot of motivation because like new environment. Same with me, I guess new environment is always good for everyone. And then Panther was like coming from a really bad team. I think he would agree, like Sanguine and Burrito. So he had so much motivation to like actually do well. First time he thinks he can win on this team. Dardez never plays meta stuff. Like I don't remember the last time he played Terra or Fafnir. Like he hates playing meta picks. Never play R2 either. It's like he just wants to play out of meta stuff. So when he said Noct, I was like, yeah, sure. And it already fits my playstyle, you know, setup gods. Every team has like one person who dictates how the game goes. They just don't want to play other stuff. So when let's say Rafa wants not to play Fafnir or Trix doesn't want to play Fafnir, you know, they're not allowed. I like janky stuff. He was like, I actually beg him to play more janky stuff. He doesn't want to. I tell him to play Nemesis, Naja. He doesn't really like it that much. Told him Morgan, Jonqui, but I told him to play Hunter. He was excited for that one, but we never get to play it. That's it. Like you could kind of honestly, you can play any support in the game, any mid laner in the game if you just have a strat around. And we just like, if someone feels comfortable with a god, we'll try to make it work.
A lot of credit goes to you and the rest of the rival squad, Alpha Jackal, about how willing you guys are to change your picks and play things that other teams might not be ready for. Elevate might be the only team in Europe that kind of out-weirds you in that respect.
Yeah, and as I said, for us, it can be difficult to pinpoint what we're going to play. We have no clue what Elevate are going to play. Well, we kind of do now that they're really sticking to one style, and a lot of that really does come down to Dazer as well, their coach, who they brought on for the full split. Him and Cherryo have very similar thinking processes when it comes to Smite and comes to the picks. Dazer very known for trying to influence Cabrakan and Odin picks into his draft, and Cherryo, he embodies that.
Cherryo is just always going to be super excited anytime he gets to play the Guardian-esque characters, just because it fits his playstyle so well. All he really wants to do is just set up the rest of his team. He's happy to absorb all the damage in the world and even die as long as his team is getting the cleanups afterwards or the objectives. And I think a lot of the times he's able to accomplish that effectively.
So much of what Elevate wants to do is that triple Guardian, double Hunter composition. Is it as simple as if DeathPanter is playing a mage, something went wrong during the draft?
No, I think he has an incredibly good Raijin. We thought we didn't get to see much out of it yesterday. I think it was just more of a, we lost a game, we lost 2 games that we should have won, and that just weighed on them a tiny bit. Not having that much LAN experience does affect them slightly. But his Raijin is phenomenal. His Syllab maybe not so much, but yeah, I feel like if he's on a Hunter, he is just immensely better. It's who he is, something that has to be banned out or picked up here by Dignitas.
Is that a hindrance to have a knowing that you aren't going to have as much magical damage in your draft if you're picking what you want to pick?
Well, considering Cherryo and his god pool, I think that Elevate are able to compensate for it very nicely because of the fact that they can rely on their jungler to make up for those shifts. And I think even No Numbers yesterday came out with an incredible performance for never really having much best of 5 experience. This team did insanely well. The fatigue factor definitely came into play as well. It was kind of evident towards the end of Game 3, start of Game 4, that they were starting to get a little bit burned out, and that's just kind of to be expected whenever you don't have that LAN experience.
No Numbers had only played 4 games at LAN before their set yesterday, and then surpassed that in one set against Obey. What has this guy done to really grow as a solo laner, Alpha Jackal? Because he was just kind of one of those under the radar, like, yeah, good enough solo laners, but he's really stepped up as of late.
It's just grown in confidence from match to match, and he's shown that he is not afraid to play into a losing matchup. He's not afraid to play those Guardians that might not give him pressure, but will give his team that composition that they want going into the mid and late game. And to have a solo laner like that who's willing to play for the team rather than for himself, it really helps a team like Elevate.
I think that's an important distinction for the fans at home, that not every team needs to have 5-star players who are going to do it all. In fact, it almost never works out to have 5-star players who are going to do it all. Knowing that you've got Jermain and Dardez who are carry players, and I truly mean that in the support role, that Dardez can carry a game for Elevate. No Numbers just needs to fill his role, and that's being that solo lane frontliner for Elevate.
And he has shown that when Jermain has fallen down a bit and when he's got behind, Dardez will always be there to help pick him back up and put himself back in a position to go, please carry this game. I do not want to see you die again. Don't get soloed.
Dardez and Jermain just have such a profound understanding of each other. And granted, most of that's going to be credited to the fact that they've just been playing together for so long that you just eventually establish that easy build-up synergy. But also for Elevate, what I'm really looking at is they're a team that understands, even though not every single lane is going to be a winning lane, this can still be a very ideal draft for what we're trying to accomplish within the match. Maybe we're looking for predominantly AoE damage and controlling the team fights to then dominate the pacing. But a lot of people can kind of fall victim to, I need to win, I need to pick the winning lane matchup. But I think players such as Dardez and No Numbers have just grown to understand winning lane doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be winning the team fights.
Trixtank, the man on your screen there on the left-hand side with his duo lane partner Arkkyl. That duo lane matchup in this one is going to be really exciting to watch. We just went over Dardez and Jermain and how they are one of the more underrated duos in the game. Trix and Arkkyl, no one's underrating these two. These are two really strong players, but have not been able to dominate here so far at Super Regionals. For my money, I think that Trix has played very well here at Super Regionals, and Arkkyl has had flashes of greatness, but it's also been a little bit inconsistent.
And to that I agree, and as I said before, it probably comes down to the fact that he's no longer on those safe hunters, and he hasn't adjusted his playstyle accordingly. And Trixtank, he has played incredibly well during these Super Regionals, but he also has a tendency to overextend, put himself out of position for the sake of trying to initiate a team fight. And in this set of Super Regionals, that's been exploited rather than being a boon to his team.
Trixtank has had a lot of success at LAN in his career, nearly a 59% win rate for him. He's the only European support besides iRaffer with an assist per game over 10, and his dual lane partner Arkkyl has one of the highest damage per games in the entire league at over 21,000. But when you're not playing a safe hunter, as you've touched on a couple times, Alpha, trying to get all that damage can end up putting you in a bad spot.
We've already covered it quite a few times, but I think the main storyline here for Dignitas and the reason why they're 0-4 right now is because they're not really playing off of Trixtank in the way that we've seen them in the past. And for Arkkyl in particular, he needs to kind of just try to stick a little bit closer to his support. More often than not, the few times where he is getting picked off, aside from the mistimed relic usage and whatnot, it's just been no one else has been around him. But Trixtank isn't the one out of position because he's the one that's having to start off the fights. You just need to pay more mind to where their support is at.
And that's more of a late game problem in my mind for Dignitas. The early game has been pretty inconsistent for them as well, and that comes down to Variety and Qvofred and how they're working together. They don't seem to be on the same page as they were during the online part.
And then that's just probably down to the fact that there's a lot of stuff going on around the map, and Qvofred is trying to influence all of it rather than focusing on his own game. They're trying to play as that 5-man team, which you should always do, but focus on one problem at a time rather than trying to put out every single fire.
Super Regionals continues here. It's Dignitas versus Elevate, our third match of the day. It's been a lot of fun putting together a Super Regional show, but all you guys get to see is what we put out right in front of you. Well, our very own Tom Battinger, F-Dot, he put out a little behind-the-scenes video, get you a little look and see how all this goes on.
Hey, what's up, folks? We're here at Super Regionals. Of course, Tom Battinger, F-Dot here. Right now, we're in the middle of game number 1 of Luminosity versus Space Station. I've got Alpha Jackal here on the desk with me. And so basically what we're doing right now is we're just watching the game, taking a ton of notes, trying to get everything going right now. It's 7-3. LG's currently kicking ass, but you know what? you guys don't always get to. You guys are coming for Worlds, right? hi-rezexpo.com, but you don't get a chance to come to Super Regionals. So let me hop off my little perch here and let's take a look around, and I'll show you what's going down. So we've got our commentators right here. This is Tully and Finch doing their thing, really crushing it right now. And let's show you a little bit of behind the scenes action. So over here in the world of production, as we have it, this is where all the magic happens pretty much. A lot of people have their desks going over here, no big deal, but this is where everything comes down. It's actually really cool. So everybody's got a dedicated job. Right here, we've got Replay Man. Right here, we have Spectator Man. Right here, we've got Soundboard Man. We've got Tyler, who puts everything together, pushes different buttons to make sure we got the right thing on screen. And then, of course, we got Graphics Man. Everybody's got a very specific job, real tough to do. And then Pekkas and Jen just sort of yell at people to make sure it all works out. Let's go say hi to the players. Zayden over here is actually our resident fire putter outer. Anytime something goes wrong, he's the one that makes it right. So give a real big shout out to Zayden as we get back into it. So again, there's our commentators, Hindu Man in between. Say hi. And we're going to go say, this is where everybody watches the games, right? This is where we watch the games from. So we've got a number of players and coaches and everybody hanging out here. You can tell it's kind of a casual atmosphere. It's really fun being a fly on the wall here. Sometimes in between games, I'll actually sit out here and just see what I can pick up as far as what the players are saying about the picks or you know what's going on or whatnot. It's actually a lot of fun. And then I'll show you where the players can't go actually. So Panda Cat, get out of the way. Get out of the way, Panda Cat. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. And here we have the actual players playing. This is during a live game. You've got your cut. You've got people taking pictures. The players have to be really ready to go. Vinny's sitting here as an admin. You got cameras going, like I said, and I mean, right now, this is LG's playing. Oh, team fight time. Nice. Looks like LG's winning this team fight. I think that's the case. Mask certainly feeling happy about it. Across the way you can see Space Station Gaming. So these guys can actually look around their monitor to talk shit if that's what they want to do. So again, a lot of fans here, or a lot of players here ready to go. And as far as that's concerned, we've got the game on the big screen. And it's kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down and watch the game. So I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.
That's a little look in at what's going on behind the scenes here at Super Regionals. My favorite part of that video is just listening to Jeff. Some say he's still on Seoul to this very moment.
I wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Jeff has probably got some of the best comms that you could probably want to have on your team, just because you know he's always going to be calling every single bit of the action as it's unfolding. And that, to me, it just makes everything so much easier to keep in mind.
Sitting among the players, I mean, FDOT kind of alluded to it there in the middle of everything, that it's one of the most fun parts of these Super Regionals, and I'm sure it even is for you, Alpha, just getting a chance to talk to other players from other teams and see what they're thinking about the game. You can learn a lot just by how they view how other teams are playing.
And this is one of the few times we actually get to talk to some of these players, because we're not sitting up at 3 a.m. saying, hey, can we spectate your scrims, please, Noble? Because we're asleep. And
right.
I'm just concerned right now that you have a team of superheroes back there that we have no idea about. Soundboard Man, Cameraman. Probably some of the worst superhero names I've ever heard. They could do what they...
Well, you can't just come in here on my desk and start talking about my production friends
sorry, whose
like
desk?
that. Mine. My desk.
No, 2 versus 1. We win.
My desk. Those are my production superheroes back there.
I still don't have a desk, let's be honest.
You definitely do not, and don't think that you're going to get one anytime soon either. It's Dignitas versus Elevate. It's coming up very shortly. Thank you so much for sticking with us. The players should be ready any moment now. In my head, that is the most pressure-oriented mid laner that Dignitas has in Zyrhoes' God pool that he's shown, at least, during this online portion of the fall split. Soul is probably the other one that comes to mind with Zyrhoes. He's played Giannis as well, but those gods are a little bit more mid-game oriented than that early game push.
There's always the Raijin potential. I would think that Zyrhoes might actually start shifting a little bit more towards trying to bring out the pressure, even if it means adjusting what we've seen from him so far.
Maybe, but in game one against you, Alpha Jackal, you guys pick Odin in the first 3, you ban away a couple mid laners, and Raijin is just sitting there ready to be taken, and the fact that Dignitas don't take it there tells me that that's just not in Zyrhoes' god pool.
And we exploited that. We knew that Raijin wouldn't be a higher priority pick for them. We knew that he played it. We knew that he might bring it out, but we knew that he felt more comfortable on the Toth, on the Morrigan, on the Soul, on the Chronos, which is why you saw us ban all of those out, look to force him onto one of them, and just trap him in the Odin cage.
The Morrigan is a pick we haven't seen Zyrhoes play quite yet, but maybe this is the game that we get a chance to see it. Picks and bans ready between Dignitas and Elevate.
For how insane Zyrhoes' Morrigan has been, I am genuinely surprised at the fact that they still have not brought it out yet, just because there is just everything's on the line right now, and especially you mentioned it earlier, this could very well be the end of Dignitas' Worlds run if they end up falling to Elevate. They need to get a win underneath their belt after playing 2 matches.
Well, it seems they've done their homework with the Athena ban. And it showed that in their one loss, Obey online, they lost to this Athena jungle coming out from Cherryo, so banning it out, smart idea.
Cabrakan has been the pick that Elevate is kind of the linchpin for everything that they want to do. Dignitas has the option to ban it away, but instead, it's going to be the RTO. They picked that quite a bit, did Elevate, in their set up against Obey. So Cabrakan is open here, and that's going to be the first pick.
And there is no surprise whatsoever about that Cabrakan getting locked away instantly, because there is already a ton of flexibility. A legit 3 members from Elevate could opt for this one god, although I would probably expect it to go onto Cherryo just because of how well he was able to execute it in their drafts yesterday.
Do you ever get concerned with first picking a god like Cabrakan? Is there a particular set of gods that he doesn't do well against, Alpha?
It doesn't do well against gods that can get Blink and then still have a leap to disengage. Gods like Bakasura, as we saw on day 1, do extremely well against the Cabrakan. Anything that can very quickly interrupt his tremors as one of his main sources of damage during teamfights, like a Ganesh, could potentially do well.
Fafnir and Hu Yi picked up by Dignitas, their duo lane set in stone. Xing Chen and AMC for Elevate. AMC getting all the way down there. I love this Hu Yi pick to take it away from DeathPanter, which we touched on, but leaving open on Muzen Cobb is a good selection for Elevate's mid.
I almost want to see a Nemesis here, as risky as it might be facing into the Cabrakan, just because, judging by Elevate's draft so far, I definitely see them shifting back to that standard 3 tanky gods on top of the double ADC. That way we have the frontline composition that we need in order to protect, but it's going to be Dig taking a risk with the tier.
This tier didn't work out particularly well for Variety yesterday. Are you surprised at how early this went for Dignitas?
I am surprised, but I'm not surprised that they are actually picking it. Going into the Xing Chen, Xing Chen wants to poke you out in lane. He wants to be there, furious roll you, reduce your health, and force you to back as often as possible. Tyr doesn't care if you poke him out. He's just going to heal up with that defensive stance power cleave.
Also, the fact that Furious Roar is really great against auto-attack-based characters, reducing auto-attack damage. Tyr has more abilities available to him in the solo lane than anybody, so he doesn't care as much about that.
But I still feel as though Dignitas could have probably prioritized a mid laner for Zyrhoes as opposed to just picking the Tyr now. Tyr's not a pick that's going to get banned away, or at least I would imagine. I can't see Elevate choosing to ban that over a mid laner.
Well, with the Fafnir already picked up here for Dignitas and the Hu Yi, you're sort of expecting them and almost wanting them to go into a Soul or a Chronos, both of which are still open, and Elevate can only ban out one.
It's true, with Morrigan being one of their bans, that they're kind of locked into only banning one. I imagine Soul would be the safer ban of the two, Chronos taking a little bit longer to ramp up and be relevant, but Elevate want to go the other direction, more worried about the late game prowess of Zyrhoes' Chronos. Dignitas, on the other hand, they went for the support player for Elevate. Dardez, Sylvanas, and Nox shots at his god pool, and that's with 2 Guardians already picked for Elevate.
Definitely feel like the Chronos was the smarter ban-out choice, though, because Chronos can fare much better against the AMC than a Soul, and on top of that, I think Chronos also gets a little bit more out of the Fafnir course as well.
And I also think that the safety Chronos brings from his immunity and his ability to heal up from his rewind is more impactful than Soul's ability to stay safe through a disapparate. With Chronos' rewind, you're immuning and re-negging all the damage that's just been done to you, whilst with Soul, you're just floating away for a few seconds.
Using it as an escape more than a reset tool, I suppose. And with Soul being on the table, Dignitas is going to take it, making sure that their jungler, Qvofred, has last pick yet again. This is very similar to the picks and bans they just had against Energy.
I'd imagine it to be a ROM selection coming out from Jermain pretty shortly here, with it being left open, and it works out so well alongside of the AMC, because those are just two hunters that do so well in the mid to late game stages, and it would be practically impossible for a Huyi to try and handle them by himself.
And right now, I'm struggling to think about what other Guardian they would pick. With Sylvanas and Athena off the table, Fafnir being picked up by Dig, Cabrakan and Xing as well. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Guardians as well as the RTO.
Amir.
Could be Ymir, could be a Khepri if Dardez wanted to go for something like that. Kumbhakarna wouldn't be bad here.
That's actually what I was just about to say, actually, was the Kumbhakarna, which would catch a lot of people off guard probably, but definitely is a little bit of a sleeper pick, no pun intended.
That pun was intended. That was an outright lie that you just said to
That
me.
was not.
That was definitely
No, it's underrated.
Okay. Sure, that's
sleeper
fine.
pick. It's all the same.
I was always told not to lie on cast. How can you do this to me?
That's
I
just
am not a
Taco.
liar.
Taco makes her own rules when it comes to the cast, I suppose. Waiting on Elevate's last two selections, likely to be in the duo lane for both Dardez and for Jermain. That AMC very likely to go to that man on your screen, DeathPanter, in the mid lane for Elevate. Rom seems to be the shoe-in pick here for Elevate, not only because that's Jermain's iconic god, but also that cripple, a more under kind of talked about part of Rom's kit. Phenomenal against Fafnir, Huyi, and Tyr.
It can really catch a lot of these gods off guard, especially with the way that Jermain loves to play so aggressive. But Elevate actually taking it one step further, going for the Geb instead, loving the amount of control that they're going to have from that pick.
I like how we all completely forgot that Geb existed in the game after lamenting the fact that Geb was not picked in game 1.
We're out here talking about Kumbhakarna when Geb's still on the table. Chaac. Is this going to be Chaac jungle for Dignitas? I suppose it will be.
Oh, I hope that it isn't, to be honest, because
There's no way they give Tyr to someone not named Variety.
it's just that I can understand Chaac and wanting to have that initial bullying pressure that he can provide from early game damage, but I do feel that even alongside of a Blink, I'm just not certain what a Chaac can really provide in team fighting scenarios.
Even with Ratatoskr on the table, they go for the Chaac instead. All right, picks and bans are in. Who you got, Alpha?
Well, fighting fire with fire, the original fire is going to win. Elevate.
Elevate.
Wow, two people think that Dignitas is going to be 0-5 during their Super Regionals run. We got the casters to find out.
Thank you, Aggro. We got Finch. We got Tolly here on the cast to see how Dignitas and Elevate do. It was looking good for Dig in that picks and bans, but a couple question marks there towards the end.
That last pick, Chaac, was a big question mark for me personally because that was a bruiser option, obviously, that Qvofred wants to go into the backline, wants to make sure that he survives, has some self-sustain in his kit, but Chaac is not one of these guys that's going to have a lot of crowd control. He has a big AoE slow and a big silence, but it's not that much compared to, let's say, a Thor that has the global pressure stun. Ratatasker was available. So we'll see how Dignitas goes for this as they're going to face off their last European team of this group play.
That's right. Elevate going up against Dignitas, and you brought up a good point there. With this start off to it, they've gone up against a lot of EU teams, so having them at the beginning of the schedule is, for some people, they might perceive as a little bit tougher based on EU being a little bit better than NA lately, but now they're going to have to try and get whatever points they can here in this set.
Dignitas are expected to win this matchup, right? They're against Elevate.
Sure.
They know them inside and out. They played against each other. Wow,
early.
pretty nice speeds there. But either way, Dignitas needs to be able to win this matchup. They're already down 0-1 after their loss against Energy. They should know Elevate's playstyle inside and out, which is why they did such a good job about their bans with Sylvanas, Nox secondary, Artio, Athena in the first primary. And if they lose 0-2 here against Europe, I don't see them necessarily finding the necessary wins to stay alive against North America.
Looks like we're seeing the proxy farm here between Qvofred and Variety. No Number's trying to come down and make that hard on him instead of just going up and waiting on his lane. So I like this, getting a little bit of damage off and making this not making it easy.
Dignitas don't do this without the communication that Zyrhoes is providing for them. Like, hey, okay, I got two in my lane here mid, and then same thing goes in the dual lane. Trixtank and Arkkyl confirm that both members are present in the dual lane. This leaves a 1v2 to take advantage of in the solo lane.
And that's exactly what's happening. Dardez taking a good bit of damage on the Geb pick. That was one of the ones they picked up towards the end of that pick ban phase, and Dardez already taking a little more poke than he would have liked.
Well, Elevate are doing a good job responding fire with fire. They managed to outpush Zyrhoes in the mid lane, stripping away the red buff from Dignitas, while it was actually Elevate losing their own blue on the right side of the map as a Xing or or as any Guardian rather in that solo lane, you really need that blue buff to get off the abilities to hold the lane outside of your tower. That's why No Numbers went for these 3 mana potions.
Cherryo is on his way over to this engagement too, so they need to be careful. Arkyl's jump is actually down, but either way, not enough pressure for them to be able to keep going in on him. Instead, they'll just help defend the buffs of Jermain and Dardez.
Cherryo even making that rotation, expecting that aggression from Dignitas, keeping their buffs still present, allows them to hold onto the duel lane even further. And Dardez playing the Geb is a little less traditional of his style, you know, likes the aggressive gods, the Ares, the Bacchus, and then the more unorthodox picks like the Nox and just all sorts of crazy triple guarding action from Elevate. And this Geb is going to be providing that mid to late game defensive options that Cherryo and No Numbers is going to be looking to be aggressive with.
Well, you pointed it out earlier. Dignitas did their homework totally on that picks and bans phase. It really felt like they were trying to limit the options of Elevate. In particular, I think the smart thing they did was that first pick they did onto Fafnir, not just because it takes it away, but it's going to synergize really well with Zyrhoes on the Soul and Arkkyl here on the Hui. So taking that Fafnir pick earlier on really limited Elevate's options.
That's very true. That could have been something that Dardez would have probably wanted to do also, considering Elevate really like to go for this double Hunter composition, and more importantly, the double physical Hunter. That's why they have so many Guardians try to balance out that magical damage. Cherryo takes a little bit of poke in the mid lane, but he's not too worried.
Yeah, Trixtank actually going to be rotating in. I believe Cherryo able to reposition her with his blink, so that's going to be on cooldown for the moment, but he's happy just to be safe.
And some to be really safe is Qvofred on this Chaac, picking up the purification beats to start things off, really worried about that Geb Cataclysm.
Jermain taking a good bit of poke, but inside the minion wave is Trixtank actually in response, using the shell just to make sure he gets back out of there and keeps his health topped off, maybe not take as much damage as he would have otherwise, but other than that, everyone's okay.
That's a huge cooldown that's not available now for Dignitas. With Dardez having this blink. Uh-oh, he's actually in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, Sunbreaker committed down on top of that from Arkkyl. Not quite enough to kick down Dardez, who had 1 HP left. He'll be getting out of there. That's because Dignitas ticked over to level 5 first.
That Geb shield just saving his life. 1 or 2 more ticks of the Suns would have certainly spelled first blood. Dignitas not able to capitalize on that one, but that's enough of a technical kill to still put a pressure onto Jermain and deny him some gold potentially, or at least allow Arkkyl to back first.
It's not just dual lane where they have pressure. Zyrhoes and Qvofred just invaded the speed buff of Elevate and even are walking away with it. So Qvofred's happy to have that one around his waist. So now it's also in mid here where they're got a little bit of control.
And Dardez still sitting at level 4 with the blink. Needs to hit level 5 to make an impact in this game. 3 beats for Dignitas. Really not wanting to deal with that Cataclysm knock-up combination from Dardez. Elevate get their own blue buff, so No Numbers can be freely spamming those abilities now.
And in Elevate's, the last time we saw Elevate playing, when they lose that set, in games 4 and 5, they kind of start moving away a little bit more from their game. This is Elevate going back to what was successful for them totally.
And it was successful against Obey Alliance, too. Such a strong competitive variety blinks in and gets the Fearless on No Numbers.
Actually knocking him up. Cherryo, in turn, turns back towards Trixtank and gets the stun off on him, but everyone over here is incredibly tanky, so not too much coming from it. At this point, not that many items, but just their base protection.
That's right, and also the self-sustain from Variety. He's not worried about taking that damage, already going back up to 75% health. That's the value of the tier, and that's why a lot of players, old school players, will go back to this solo lane pick knowing just how safe he is in laning phase.
DeathPanter and Cherryo now hanging out just with Qvofred since Zyrhoes had to back a moment ago. We're 5 minutes in here, no kills just yet, no big objectives or anything have been taken so far, but Dignitas have still managed to squeeze out about a 500 or so gold lead just from taking away a few buffs, having a little bit more control over the map.
And that control started with that proxy farm between the tier 1 and tier 2 in the solo lane, stripping away the blue buff. Sure, they lost their red buff in response, but still doing a good job of denying No Numbers a decent amount of gold. If we look at the net worth value, you'll see that tier just barely over No Numbers for the moment.
And Elevate trust No Numbers. That's not the first time totally that we've seen them let him start over there by himself in that solo lane. They definitely know that even if he's up 1v2 or even if he falls behind a little bit, he can still be big impact for him later.
There's been a lot of traditional solo laners that put themselves in that position to try to put himself behind so that the rest of his team can thrive and flourish. And No Numbers has not traditionally been one of those players to think of. When he first started playing the solo lane in his career, he's been known as this aggressive Bologna player that builds a little weird with Executioner and Soul Eater and stuff like that, but now really just going back to traditional Soul Lane roots, picking the Guardian, losing, not necessarily losing the matchup, but not hard winning it the way he's normally used to, and allowing his team to do their style.
We're seeing a bit of a shift here for Elevate. I remember in that set they were having against Obey, it felt like they were relying almost 100% on Cherryo's initiations. But towards the end of it, we started seeing a little bit more from Dardez too. This time, both of them have the blink. For Dardez with that blink Cataclysm, and Cherryo to blink in with that Tectonic Shift. So it won't all just be on the Cabrakan.
It's going to be a rinse and repeat from Elevate. One blinks in, then he'll absorb a lot of damage and then go out. But Dardez taking a lot of damage.
They do. It's enough to delete Dardez. Arkkyl ends up getting credit for that one, dying in the sun.
And just like that, one Cataclysm buys him enough time to absorb all those cooldowns. Variety blinks in, gets Cherryo on the flip side. Trixtank going in that dragon form, wants to find a return kill.
No Numbers using that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel just to try and create some space for himself. Trixtank actually ends up pretty low and has to jump away for the moment. DeathPanter rotating in on the back, but not in time to save No Numbers.
Oh, the bees!
Trixtank gets credit for that one as DeathPanter kills Trixtank.
The bees are just spreading all across the board against Elevate, and they are on the board now with DeathPanter finding Trixtank finally. And Trixtank was kind of in this awkward position where he was ping-ponging between speed and blue. He had no real safe option. He thought he'd be safe with his teammates, but his teammates had the bees, and it went back on the dragon.
And DeathPanter was able to loop around the back end of that fight too, so he was able to come in a really safe position and then just go in on low health targets. That ends up being a 2-for-1 in favor of Dignitas. It started off with them taking down Dardez in the middle, and then there was further, aggression later on. So just a good use of by Qvofred of his ultimate, so he can come in with Chaac and just have big impact.
And Dignitas not allowing Dardez to do what he wants to do, which was that blink Cataclysm. Having to use that cooldown defensively is not the mindset out of Elevate currently. That's why they went for that blink, right? You're trying to penetrate that backline. So that's something that Dignitas are probably going to be leaning on throughout the rest of this game.
But this is good news if you're a Dignitas fan. They took a really rough loss just now to Energy, and there was a chance for them to come in with a bad mindset or come in a little bit tilted in this set, but that does not seem to be the case here for me.
Not at all here. Dignitas know what Elevate's gameplay and style are. They kind of picked around it like you were talking about and alluding to, taking away Hou-Yi from DeathPanter, who's been phenomenal with it, taking away the Fafnir, making sure there would be not too much synergy with that double 100 composition, and they've sort of reset the clock here. It's so important here to just kind of take such a bad loss like that against Energy, sweep it under the rug, and move on, because there's still, after this best of one, there's going to be 3 more throughout today and tomorrow that Dignitas need to win.
That's right. It's going to be down here in these group stages where every point is so important, especially when everyone's playing at such a high level like they are. I mean, even Noble looked good earlier up against Energy, as No Numbers is once again in a little bit of trouble, down to half health.
It's funny that you mentioned Noble too as well, because that was that first international matchup.
That's
I think that Energy were more prepared for Dignitas than they were against Noble, a different style between North America and Europe. And honestly, being scrim partners as well, I think that they really got into the head. And even sitting from my office as a spectator of that game, I could just hear Energy roaring in the distance, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this game too.
No Numbers able to get that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel off. See you later, Variety. Evening up the kill count is the solo laner for Elevate.
It's just no possible escape for Variety. His ultimate was even still available, but being caught in the ultimate from No Numbers, he was just taking a trip to nowhere land.
Yeah, a lot of people go down, to their local fair amusement parks and take those kind of rides on purpose, totally, but I don't think that was the idea that time for Variety.
That's not an amusement park that I want to go to anytime soon. Dignitas need to find a response, though. They struck first blood early on, but now giving up the next 2 deaths. That allows Elevate a little more breathing room. Dignitas are still in a decent position here as Arkkyl sitting at level 12. He's building his Devo stacks, but because Jermain finished those Devo gloves first, he's going to win that race.
And look at this itemization here from Variety and Qvofred as Trixtank tries to keep DeathPanter here away from the rest of his team. They're both recognizing that they've got a chance to go up against some of these magical Guardians and limit their impact and force DeathPanter and Jermain to do the damage.
That's true. It's going to be so important for these double physical hunters to get to the mid to late game safely. That's why Elevate are creating such a tanky front line, so that way when they engage, that Dignitas can't just walk freely by this front line without taking taking a lot of damage in return.
Yeah, Arkkyl jumped in aggressively, looking for the 1v1 man fight up against Jermain. But Jermain, as we all know, is happy to take that fight anytime, standing tall up against Arkkyl, one of the best in EU.
But Jermain playing his traditional Rama in the backside is Trixtank, forcing the beats from Jermain. Arkkyl procs the Mark of the Golden Crow in the sky, hits the first one. Needs to hit the second one, but the Geb Shield's going to buy him time.
And that's because Geb's coming in for the Cataclysm. Darman has Arkkyl looking low. Sunbreaker as Jermain looking lower, hitting the auto. Looks like max range and the Dragonic Corruption on the Dardez. That's enough for Arkkyl to get a double kill, but he lands into the Tectonic Shift coming out from Cherryo, and DeathPanter gets one return kill.
Arkkyl too greedy there jumping in. There was no need to jump in. Just allow your support to get the kill. You shouldn't use your escape for a kill there. That 2-for-1, not worth. That could have easily been a 2-for-0.
And it was off of such a great play for Arkkyl too, so I agree. I feel like maybe just getting a little bit too much tunnel vision there, but in the end, a good rotation over from the rest of Dignitas let them get one more kill back at the end of that, or rather from Elevate let them get one more kill at the back end of that. So now it's 3-4 of the kills, and Dignitas still sitting at top.
If Arkkyl survives there, maybe Dignitas goes for the Gold Fury. Zero's going to get poked out by Cherryo, but not until the Stellar Burst returns the favor slightly. And this is the little things that Dignitas can potentially clean up to try to really start getting the W's cleaner, right? It's these little deaths that's so unnecessary that's hindering their performance.
And you're right. It seems like something little because it happened, because it was very quick. But that isn't. But I don't think it makes it little. I think you're right. That's something that could have easily been an objective, or at least a forced fight where maybe they get another pick and start to recoup some of the, or start to push that lead to a range where Elevate can't fight. So I think you're right to have that focus on what seems like a smaller moment there.
And now Elevate can just breathe easily, knowing that without the hunter, the physical hunter from Dignitas, not necessary to defend the Gold Fury, they're going to just reset a little bit, still wait for Dardez to hit that level 12 marker. He needs that second relic. He doesn't have the defensive option as he's went for the blink. Has a lot of flexibility now with the next direction that he wants to go. I'll be pretty sure that it's going to be a shell for Dardez next.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot of defensive relics just yet. It looks like, more importantly, trying to respond to the control that's being presented when there's this many Guardians and Warriors in a game. It kind of makes it necessary. Arkkyl actually getting very low. Jermain, if he can hit these snipes, Aegis comes out to keep him alive for the moment, but Cherryo's here to lock him down. It still wasn't quite enough. There's a Tectonic Shift. Cherryo gets the first kill on the Arkkyl.
Trixtank trying to avenge, finds the stun out to Jermain. The Supernova from Zyrhoes doing its work. Here comes DeathPanter applying the Stinger, getting the kill onto Trixtank. Gets a 2-for-0 for Elevate.
Yeah, that's a big fight for Elevate. DeathPanter came in and just honed right in on Trixtank and helped clean that one up. Now this is the clean kind of fight you were looking for last time, but they weren't. I don't know if they're going to be able to get anything more off it.
Qvofred almost stopping the back from Cherryo. That could have been a kill if he hits the axe, gets the Torrent after the fact, the spin to win, and he would find a return kill. But knowing the back timer there, really safe. And essentially, even without the rotation from Cherryo, Jermain basically got a solo kill there, or at least force out the Aegis from Arkkyl. And that would have been a huge advantage for Elevate to try to take advantage of if they wanted to kind of put the pressure onto that tier 1 tower. But instead, with all this action, normally Europe is more contempt about farming. If you think about these previous sets between Elevate and Obey, Dignitas and Rival, the beginning of the game was slow.
Right.
But as these players and teams are getting more comfortable in Super Regionals, they're not afraid to take these fights.
And that favors teams like Elevate, who, as you said, are kind of against the grain in that way. They're naturally brawly, these guys. They like to fight it out. And Arkkyl willingly going in for that fight with Jermain and ends up just getting a little more than he was looking for. But either way, Elevate weren't able to take too much off the back of it. So yes, it's 2 kills, but Dignitas are still at least a little bit out in front gold-wise.
That's true. They've been ahead relatively small lead. 2,000 gold lead, nothing to write home about, but that's something that they can still build off of. And that's Jermain not even caring about this 2-level deficit. He's playing his traditional ROM. He knows the finesse that it takes to win these little 1v1 Hunter v Hunter boxing exchanges, and he'll take it every single time.
Blinking in his Cherryo onto Arkkyl, but that means the Storm Call coming out from Qvofred in response. They'll go ahead and back up at the Tectonic Shift. Actually does trap 2. Dardez gets the knockup. Qvofred is the one taking damage. Zyrhoes trying to rotate in the side. That Stellar Nova, or Supernova rather, Stellar Burst. One day was enough to get him to deter.
DeathPanter used his ultimate, doing a lot of damage to Qvofred, but he didn't want to overextend to pick up the Stinger. Great call, resetting that team fight, forcing Qvofred to back on out of there. Now Elevate are grouped up a little bit in the left for a 2v2. Dardez, without the roll, he's going to avoid the stun, so he'll be thanking his lucky stars for that one. And DeathPanter backing underneath his own Sentry Ward. That's what you really want to do as a competitive player. If you're going to back anywhere, back behind your own Sentry.
And that fight over there, totally, because you're right, backing the Sentry keeps you safe. That fight over there was over Oracles, I feel like, right? Really? It's like no one had pulled any kind of objectives or anything, and Cherryo just sort of hard commits.
It's not a bad idea as a Blink Cabrakan to do it. Maybe forcing out a Beads and Aegis, really applying the pressure that you want onto Dignitas. Because now, if you force those relics, Dardez can follow up within a minute span and then really take full advantage of his full combo.
And that's what they're looking for. Like you said, that's why they have that double blink, so they can get that follow-up initiation. Cherryo does lock down Qvofred, but Chaac's going to start trying to just heal that up. So they do get him low, but nothing really comes of it. Not even any relic usage or anything from the patient Qvofred.
There's the damage onto this Chaac that we've been talking about. And what's really important was the rotation of cooldowns that Cherryo applied onto Qvofred. He waited for the Arkkyl silence before dropping the Tremors. Very important, because otherwise you drop the Tremors first, now you're going to get silenced and you're not going to have that very important displacement.
Zyrhoes, Trixtank hanging out in mid. Dardez is right over the wall, though, and he does have that blink available, so he could come in. Instead, chooses just to come back and hang with DeathPanter, who has been playing really well all land long so far. So I'm glad to see him on something that's basically just a hard carry like this, a Muzen Cobb, because we know he can get the most out of it.
I really like seeing these land metas just kind of change throughout the days, throughout the best of 5 sets, whatever the case may be, of how players switch things up, whether it's their god picks or their item choices. Stone of Gaia just came back into the meta here. Now, after the nerf here, where it doesn't affect certain cooldowns and stuff like that, it's still a good item considering how long these team fights have been panning out in the late game. Just the pure regen is good enough to stay relevant in a team fight, maybe get off another rotation of cooldowns. And also another important factor, or item rather, is this Arkkyl, how multiple players are picking it up, specifically both Variety and Qvofred wanting to disrupt the follow-up combination from this triple guarding comp of Elevate.
A bit of a rotation was coming over here towards Jermain, but he was getting plenty of pings out on the map, so he had no problem just sort of backing up. Those Oracles are just about to respawn, and we saw these two teams are willing to fight over them, so Dignitas are in position to be able to get them pulled, and they take them both before Elevate can have a chance to come in.
All 5 Dignitas members are here. No numbers going on the backhand side. Furious Roar not on the mark onto Zyrhoes, who has this Book of the Dead, giving him that health shield that he really needs to survive the initial burst from such an aggressive composition from Elevate.
And this is a big game. I'm not afraid if they're taking it a little bit more patient now that we're reaching that mid-game phase of the game, because Dignitas really can't afford to go down 0-2 here. Totally.
Yes, it's so impactful for them to really slow it down, and Elevate want to force the issue. They have the blinks at behind the scenes. They want to penetrate that backline, so Dignitas need to just chill. Just let Elevate do their thing, because they've been through it all. They've been through the ringer right now, Dignitas. They haven't won a single game yet, so I think it's just time for them to switch things up.
And the Death started talking about this, Tolly. It kind of feels like Dignitas are playing Elevate's game a little bit here. They've gone very tanky with their composition, the same way that Elevate has. Do you agree that that might kind of favor Elevate, kind of playing their game?
Absolutely. We saw the way Elevate was able to really find the wins against Obey Alliance with that triple guardian composition, and Dignitas have been known to play this tanking composition every now and then. Qvofred used to play Chaac back at launch tournament, actually, back in the day, and this is not something new or foreign to him. Arkkyl is going to take a lot of damage, forced to beads away, but the problem is this tanky comp is a Chaac jungle, which will slowly start to fall off if Dignitas doesn't maintain a huge lead now and run away with it.
That's a good point. Outside of his ultimate, he's not going to be providing some of the same control. We'll see later. Qvofred, though, is here taking a lot of damage, trying to help lock down Cherryo. He does get the silence off, but the shell and the Geb shield means that he's basically still full health after all those cooldowns and looking for more.
Absorbing just so much damage. That's something that Cherryo has built a name off of himself from, at least in this lane, is just absorbing cooldowns. That's what he did when he was playing this RDO against Obey Alliance. He would blink in, force a lot of cooldowns, and then just barely survive in the nick of time with these shells. And now it's Elevate pulling the Gold Fury.
And they are really pulling it. It's very low. Getting the knock up onto 2 is Dardez trying to bait in an engagement from the rest of Dignitas. Variety's on the back end, and Cherryo's blinking in onto Arkkyl. Aegis comes out already. Whirlwind has him thrown back into the snipes, but it's No Numbers who ends up cleaning it up. Variety jumps in, knocking up Trixtank, who has to, or not Trixtank rather, but Dardez.
Dardez is living. He survived.
Trixtank fell in the back, though.
Dardez finally falls, but not until 3 Dignitas members is dead.
Good
the
wall.
walls catching Zyrhoes. Cherryo with a double kill. Variety, the last man standing. He doesn't have a Lawbringer, and Elevate should get this first Gold Fury of the game.
That's a huge fight there for Elevate. Yes, Dardez does end up falling, but as we pointed out, it took so long and such a commitment from Dignitas that this fight went heavily in their favor. Now with 4 members dead, they're finally up in the gold lead.
It was the important beads that Elevate procced onto Arkkyl from before the team fight even happened. The communication was there. Cherryo had his back turned to Arkkyl. He procs his one, and then he 180s, blinks into Arkkyl, stunning him, knowing that if this stun hits, all the follow-up damage will happen before the Aegis, and that's exactly what happened. Then what happens next? No Numbers pulls the Hunter from Dignitas into action. Elevate find a clean and easy pick, and the rest of the team fight is just theirs.
And I think that's what we're seeing is the difference between them. Yes, both these teams have gone with tanky compositions, but the control, I feel like, is still pretty heavily in the favor of Elevate between a Xing, a Cabrakan, and a Geb. And that's kind of what it felt like in that team fight. It took so much effort for them to finally bring down Dardez, to finally get him into the rest of the damage from Dignitas, that the whole time Elevate were just tanking out the squishies.
The only god outside of those 3 from Elevate that might have even more control is Kumbhakarna, that they were talking about on the desk.
Right, yeah.
He has just too much control. Cherryo still baiting himself against these 4 or 5 members from Dignitas, and that's just been the key element to Elevate's success, is how much Cherryo just puts himself out there and everybody takes the bait.
That actually might have been a little bit of trouble for Cherryo if that ricochet hits, but either way, he makes it out scot-free. Portal Demon and Gold Fury have fallen across the map. Trixtank gonna have to jump for his life. Cherryo was ready to try and continue to lock him down, but he's able to make it out and go ahead and back to base. But this is what's so strong about him. I was asking you earlier, if the RDO gets banned out, is that a big deal? But you were saying maybe it's really the Cabrakan.
That's what Alpha Jackal was saying behind the scenes, that Elevate really thrive more off of this Cabrakan pick, because it's the tectonic shift that really brings it back in their favor. They find that one prime and juicy target that's just wanting to get taken out, and that's Elevate's game plan. Just isolate somebody with the Cabrakan ultimate. Sure, RDO would be nice for them, but it's the Cabrakan that really brings that 1-2 punch.
He punishes them for taking 1 step too forward. You take that 1 step, now you're stuck here with me. Cherryo doing an excellent job of punishing anyone who comes out even a little bit out of position, going around the Stellar Burst that time, and the Disapparate keeps Zyrhoes safe.
Just the presence alone from Cherryo on this Cabrakan forces an early Disapparate from Zyrhoes. They don't get anything from it here, but that could be a foreshadowing of later team fights.
No Numbers and Variety both are kind of making half rotations here, thinking about joining here in mid lane, perhaps signaling that they're looking for a little bit more, maybe trying to force this tier 1. Variety's come along the back, and No Numbers has to be pinging it out.
Blink.
He blinks in, pushes in DeathPanter, Geb Shield, immediate, but still there's too much damage. DeathPanter alive for the moment thanks to Aegis, but Arkkyl is finally able to clean that one up. Into the Draconic Corruption goes Trixtank to try and save his team.
Jermain is here. Here comes the spin, cashing out 3 members! Dignitas are in a lot of troubles. Variety is forced to run away, but in the sky, Jermain hitting 2. The third one not on the mark, and Variety barely escapes that one.
Even though No Numbers hits the big ultimate, they don't get very much out of it. DeathPanter so far, the only casualty of war in this fight so far. Dignitas looking good in mid lane, despite Variety's presence having to be known by all of Elevate.
If No Numbers doesn't hit 3 members there with that ultimate, then Dignitas just win that team fight so convincingly. They probably start plucking away some towers, maybe even getting a Fire Giant under their belt. But No Numbers keeping them alive for the moment here. Unfortunately, with DeathPanter's death, there wasn't that much follow-up from the ult.
They weren't able to do that much in order to get any kills out of it, but as you said, keeping them alive is pretty significant. Clinging to the small lead that they do have for themselves is also pretty big. This game's been played at such a steady pace here, Totally. We're already 25 minutes in. What that means is now when you start losing team fights, you can really lose a lot of them off the back of it.
Good bait by No Numbers, barely avoiding the ricochet. Finally, Dignitas get that solo lane tower. They're grouped up in a nice spot to be able to isolate Dardez in mid, as Zyrhoes is holding his ground over there. Fire Giant not being looked at by either team. But man, this game is so close. Dignitas were up 2,000 gold at one point. Elevate now up 2,000 gold. Zyrhoes, though, is forced to beats away, and Cherryo blinks, trying to do off a lot of damage. He's looking for the shift.
He still wants to try and lock him down, and he does. That actually gets the Aegis out of Zyrhoes as well. Now Variety loops in, pushes Dardez back underneath the tower. Qvofred's in the back end, looking for the storm call. He gets it. See you later, Dardez. Arkkyl with the Sunbreaker takes that one.
Elevate just too far overextended. They really wanted to try to catch Zyrhoes, but the rest of his teammates right by his side, bailing out the mid laner, taking advantage of Dardez, not having the shell to bail himself out. The Geb shield was on cooldown as well, and that's Dignitas allowing Elevate to push their buttons a little bit and then retaliating with full force.
And that's the strength of Soul in particular. Sort of, it almost is like she extends the time of her relics there. It's like uses the beads, disapparates into the Aegis. And so she's got that period of safety that other carries or squishies don't have, as Variety continues to pressure DeathPanter, but No Numbers is here to help.
Doing the root onto Variety, gonna absorb a little bit of damage, not too worried considering he has that defensive power cleave that he can easily use on the Gold Fury and walk away. And Jermain, DeathPanter now wants to use his beads there, recognizing that that wasn't going to be a hard commit from Dignitas. And Gold Fury relatively low here, but Dignitas is going to reset.
They are going to back up. There's enough from Elevate where they don't feel like they can get this cleanly just yet. They still don't have Arkyll's ultimate or Zyrhoes. Some of their best confirm for these Gold Furies, either the Supernova and Sunbreaker, both really good in particular on objectives.
With Cherryo respawning here, this is going to be a 5-on-5 full-on fight from Elevate. They're going to try to look for blinks here potentially, maybe onto Zyrhoes, but it's going to get canceled out. It's now Dignitas wanting to isolate these two tanky targets.
It's hard to isolate No Numbers, though. He jumps back out. Tectonic Shift is forced out of Cabrakan to try and save the life of the Xing Chen. Dignitas has kind of just been hanging here in the middle, trying to force these fights for the last few minutes.
They have the vision necessary around the jungle side to see who's out of position, and with two members from Elevate outside of that tier 1 mid, it was very easy for Variety to catch at least one of them and do a little bit of poke. No Numbers had to back, uses the teleport to get back into the lane. Not something that we've seen very often from most soul laners, but something that No Numbers prefers.
It's a bit of a No Numbers special. Looks like Dignitas trying to move the fight over towards this jungle. Blink and Variety actually gets two members. Qvofred in response goes in with the storm call. Supernova is dropped over the top of the fight. Doesn't get quite the damage they were looking for. Getting out of there is Cherryo, but it's Qvofred actually who's very low. No Numbers cleans that one up. Over here on the left-hand side, Variety wasn't going to let Cherryo get away for free. DeathPanter does take Trixtank, and Cherryo gets out once!
Cherryo counter-blinking against Dignitas. Variety saw red in his eyes, wanted to at least get one kill for his team. And Dignitas, they drop two. Arkkyl trying to do what he can, but he gets knocked up, rooted. He jumps away. He's going to delay the Gold Fury for the moment, but Elevate with their second Gold Fury of the game, extending the lead to 3,500.
And this is Elevate winning the team fight when there are objectives up on the map to take. Dignitas won previously, but there wasn't really anything for them to capitalize on. In particular, though, hero Cherryo coming up big by staying alive there in that engagement and forcing the overextend there from Dignitas.
That was a great engage from Dignitas to start things off. The blink fearless, the double fearless from Variety, catching two melee targets, and then it was Arkkyl dropping the Suns, isolating DeathPanter from Jermain from assisting, but these two targets are just so resilient. It's almost impossible to burst them fast enough to actually take advantage of that fearless.
And it also kind of feels like maybe they're bumping into some of the limitations of Chaac, as Variety is actually getting rotated on, forces him into the ultimate, but Dardez is right there waiting for him. Still, though, he's able to escape. Qvofred now pushing a little bit further onto the gas, gets pushed back by No Numbers, but that's what I was saying about Chaac. Once he goes in and drops the ultimate, he doesn't provide much more control.
No, that's very true. He doesn't also have that much damage in the late game. His base damage is good enough in the early stages, but that's when there's not that much defenses. The defensive ultimate from Qvofred and Elevate trying to take advantage of that. Variety has still yet to come back to this team fight.
And now the Portal Demon's been taken down by Elevate. They're able to do so actually rather cleanly without having to give up very important cooldowns or any lives. Now they're going to go ahead and back up. This is a little bit more discipline than what we saw from them in this O-base set. They got what they wanted. Now they're backing it up.
Elevate just playing their game to a T. Dignitas cannot respond in kind here, currently down about almost 4,000 gold. 30 minutes in, not the end of the world for Dignitas. It could still be off the back of that one team fight. We saw what happened in the set of Elevate versus Obey Alliance. All it took was one teamfight swing to go back in the opponent's favor. So Dignitas are still going to try to just be more defensively, making sure that Elevate don't secure this Fire Giant.
That's why Dignitas have to stick around here. It's frustrating for them, but they have to make sure that Elevate don't use the ability to come back in and steal away this Fire Giant. Now, I know Tilly, No Numbers, and Cherryo are the ones making the height plays, but Dardez on this Geb has been huge for Elevate. Sure, he's 0-4-9, but those are 4 deaths he took and not DeathPanter or Jermain.
That's true. Despite getting first blooded before the level 5 marker, he's still making a huge impact, sitting at level 17, 1 level ahead of Trixtank, and the engages here from Dardez have just been really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just off of No Numbers and Cherryo, the rotation of engages from Elevate. They have this 3-man rotation of going in, coming back out. All right, I took too much damage. Now it's your turn, Cherryo. It's like almost throwing a Pokeball out there. It's like, I choose you. Go, Dardez.
And then he's able to flip out and say, this time I choose you, No Numbers. You know, it's like they just got too many options. And that's what was creating so much frustration for Obey. When they go all in on one target, they're just sturdy enough, just able enough to back out. And then DeathPanter and Jermain come in ready to free cast, and you paid too much of a price for it. And that's what we've seen work here, again, from Dardez with the Shell, with the Geb Shield. It's too tanky.
Starting up the Fire Giant, allowing Dignitas to kind of push on in, chucking out No Numbers, but it's Variety. Takes a little bit more damage than No Numbers. Geb Shield was used, making sure No Numbers wouldn't take too much poke, but Fire Giant now being started yet again.
Being pulled in by Dardez. Cherryo actually gets knocked up, and looking for the ricochets here are Arkkyl. Eyes are going to be on the initiation. No, coming from Elevate. There it is. Cherryo goes in, but immediately gets controlled by Variety. He'll be forced to back off. Variety stops that from being worse. Arkkyl drops the Suns down on top of Cherryo.
So many
who's
slows.
Forced to Aegis through it.
The Chaac Rain and the Suns just providing so much of a slowing minefield, but now Elevate, they don't have to deal with the slows anymore. They're going to chase down Trixtank for the moment. Root onto Trixtank from No Number. Sprint being proc defensively from Dignitas. They're forced to run away for the moment, but Elevate, they're still fine with this. They're still going to poke from a distance, and they're the ones that the ball is in their court. They're the ones that can easily pull this Fire Giant.
The damage is a little more spread around on Elevate, though. Trixtank at about half health. He's kind of the only one who really took any beating in that last fight, but he doesn't seem to be afraid to push forward into that Fire Giant pit. At this point, though, Dignitas are happy that Elevate, you know, that time with the Portal Demon have worn off, and they couldn't do anything with the fire.
DeathPanter having no mana has to go back to base here. That's going to be a huge telltale sign, but I don't think Dignitas know about this because of the positioning that DeathPanter backed right behind his own Sentry Ward, and that's something Dignitas just can't take advantage of. Both Arkkyl and Trixtank backed as well. Dignitas still a little bit on the back foot here. They only got that solo tier 1 tower against Elevated once they all grouped up there, but this is the point in time where Fire Giant is going to be looked at. Despite Qvofred respawning in 5 seconds, if you're going to overcommit on the left-hand side, you're giving up the more important objective on the right.
And that's what we're seeing here. They've got to make sure they stick over here, have a bit of an unofficial truce there, so everyone was able to go back, get fully healthy. We even see them stocking up on vision to try and get an idea of where the enemy team's going to be. We can already see some of those blue wards from Elevate popping up around that Fire Giant pit, but the aggressive positioning, though, is Dignitas.
Trying to find something happening here as Trixtank is leading the charge, going to take away the Magai's Blessing from Dardez. Very important. That's a 70-second cooldown. Then now Dignitas can look to just kind of bounce around. If you want to go in for a Fearless for Variety, as long as he hits Dardez and one more target to prevent the Geb Shield, that's good for him.
No Numbers is the one getting pulled in, looking for the slowest Variety. No Numbers actually taking way more damage than he was wanting to because Arkkyl is here and he's chunking, but the rest of his team comes in time to keep him safe. But if No Numbers has to back, Dignitas knows they have the numbers advantage. That's why they come in aggressively.
That's very true. Having the Stone of Gaia for the sustain, but it's just not enough considering how healthy Dignitas are. Now going to be able to get this tier 1 solo tower. 500 gold, 34 minutes in, not that big of a deal. Elevate are still fully in charge. Dignitas wanting to go towards this Fire Giant, but without a single death from Elevate currently, they just can't pull it quite yet. No Numbers back in.
Cherryo blinks in onto Arkkyl, takes him down, takes down less than 50% health, and forces out the Aegis. Jermain's up in the air looking for the snipe. He gets him, but not quite enough. Arkyl's gonna have to leave.
He finds 2, but doesn't need the 3rd one because Arkyl's gonna have to back anyway. It's a technical 5-on-4 that Elevate could take advantage of. They're gonna pull the Portal Demon currently as Cherryo is zoning out 3 and No Numbers zoning out 1 on the left.
Has Trixtank stuck in the Tremors, just having to take all that extra magic damage. Portal Demon is secured here by Elevate, and that's the difference in the timing of when No Numbers was forced to back and when Arkkyl was forced to back. An objective was here to take.
And now without that important defensive Aegis relic, that is going to be Elevate's trigger to go into the backline yet again. One blink down from Cherryo, but guess what? Another blink's available for Dardez. However, beat's still up for Arkkyl. He needs to be ready for the secondary blink.
He needs to be ready to get out of there afterwards too, so he's also going to have to be very mindful of how he uses that jump in this engagement. Once that down, if there's time for Jermain to get his ult back up, he can even follow up with it. So he's going to have to make sure he's extra careful with his positioning. DeathPanter back into the fold though, as Elevate start to make their stance onto the Fire Giant.
Despite not having blink for another 30 seconds, Cherryo will have his ultimate momentarily. Nice Geb shield onto Cherryo. He's able to walk away cleanly, still sitting at half health, but look at this. An ultimate from Arkkyl trying to zone out Elevate members to save Cherryo was not good enough to get the kill.
Dignitas are pushing forward. They don't want to give Cherryo the chance to back and try and get healthy once more, but you're right. Arkkyl committing the Suns there is actually pretty big in that last engagement. Qvofred looking for the hammer. Actually rolling off Zyrhoes. That's a huge target. If No Numbers able to help clean this one up. Whirlwind away still doesn't get anyone, but Jermain finishes off Zyrhoes in the back.
The snipes are just so good from Jermain, raining down havoc, and Dardez is going to get answered in kind. 1-for-1 thus far. Cherryo and No Numbers onto Qvofred. The blink from Cherryo catching out Arkkyl, forces out the beats, the jump back into the tier 2 tower. DeathPanter trying to follow up, slows out a few, but the blink Fearless onto No Numbers.
No Numbers chased a little bit too far, takes a lot of damage, even though it was 1-for-1. I don't know if I want to call that one even. Losing Zyrhoes and losing Dardez are not one and the same. Without a big damage dealer, Dignitas is going to have a hard time battling Elevate.
You say it's not the same, but it's just a different kind of factor because Dardez is going to save so many members with the shield, also with the knockup, and that's a huge factor. That's a defensive option stripped away from Elevate, whereas Dignitas take away an offensive one. And this neutral 4-on-4 allows Elevate to go for the goal here because that DPS is not there from Dignitas. They have to rely on Arkkyl to get it, and as long as there's literally any frontliner from Elevate on the right side of the map, they could just delay Dignitas long enough.
Elevate are out in front still, but as we approach the 37-minute mark, really 37.5 minutes, that lead starting to mean less and less. Everyone approaching level 20, only Dardez and Trixtank who aren't there now, along with Qvofred, who's bringing up the rear. Also, just about everyone getting close to full build. At this point, we're just looking at 5v5 slugfest here, Toli.
And we're going to start seeing those red potions, purple potions coming online. Dardez going to barely avoid the stun hammer from Trixtank. Dignitas trying to get the vision that they can. Elevate are nearby as well. Variety looking for that target.
And it kind of feels like as Cherryo goes in on Trixtank, like Elevate have been okay with losing Dardez in these engagements. He's 0-5 and 10. He's the one that they've been sacrificing as long as they get something out of him.
I mean, just look at his face right there. He's as cool as a cucumber. He's willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good of the team, and that's why they have this 6,000 gold leader. So that's just going to get them a little bit closer to maybe that 3K gold potion.
But because these teams are both so tanky, Toli, it's hard for anyone to win a fight by enough margin to take the Fire Giant to start looking for towers. But look around the map. There's still so many of those up. Even if they win, there's a lot of work to push through.
It's going to be a lot of dancing around this Fire Giant here, Finch. It's just all about catching somebody out of position with a potential blink. You got 2 blinks on both sides. Who's going to pull the trigger first? It looks like it's Elevate. They're trying to play very aggressively here.
That's right. They are pushing forward. Cherryo trying to see if maybe he can get initiation without even having to use the blink. If they'll just let him walk forward. Zyrhoes, look at where Zyrhoes and Arkkyl are. They're positioned so well at the back of the fight, but still in range to try and do some damage if they need to. The difference is on the other side, it's 2 late-game hunters of DeathPanter and Jermain they got to worry about.
And that's the difference here between these two compositions. It's just a double physical hunter versus the hybrid physical and magical hunter against Dignitas. And thus far, currently, Dignitas not electing to go for Thorns here, not electing to go, only going for this one height of Nemean from the Trixtank, and it's just not enough against double physical hunter.
Now Elevator trying to force them out of that defensive position by tearing down this tier 1 tower in right. I mean, 39 minutes in, it falls pretty easily to the double hunter composition, and that way they can try and open this area up a little bit more.
This is do or die from both teams. 40 minutes in, you could just feel the tension in the air that both teams are too afraid to go beyond this tier 1 tower. tower. No numbers, just kind of baiting himself out there a little bit because Fire Giant's being pulled.
Fire Giant is being started. Elevator looking to force the issue. Jermain goes up into the air after the engagement from Cherryo, but this time he doesn't quite find the snipes he's looking for. In the backline now is no numbers, but again, not much damage onto these tanky characters.
Not at all, but the beads was forced onto Zyrhoes, and that's what Elevate is looking for. They're looking to try to catch him because No Numbers has the ultimate. If he catches the soul, he's going to be out of commission.
No Numbers does get controlled. Into the Stormcall goes Qvofred, and in the backline goes Variety looking for DeathPanter, but forced to fall back immediately. Zyrhoes does get the knock-up onto Dardez, but he's fine with taking it. Cherryo actually gets controlled back into the back of the team. It's Arkkyl who ends up falling, and then Cherryo falls in return.
Qvofred forced to run away. Elevate is going to reset here yet again, trading a tanky target for a DPS. Arkkyl eliminated Cherryo off the map. It's Elevate with a 4-on-4, but they're the ones that could potentially look to melt this Fire Giant if Dignitas are not in position.
These two big damage dealers still being up for Elevate are a pretty big deal. Yes, they don't have Cherryo, their main engaged, but they've got plenty of protection between No Numbers and Dardez, but Variety lurking, daring them to come through that portal, and they're not having it. Jermain and DeathPanter are not going to come through.
Arkkyl, I think, was caught slipping there. He died with both relics still up. You cannot, as a late game hunter, allow that to happen. Even if you need to use your panic relics there, just do it, honestly. Buy yourself that extra 2 seconds, and maybe your teammates can adjust.
Either way, it looks like Dignitas, fortunately, are not going to get punished too much for that, or at least fortunately, if you're a Dignitas fan, Elevate not able to get anything off of it. So back to the Fire Giant dance, it looks like we go. And I mean, I know you said Arkkyl didn't use any beads or relics, but he'll have those cooldowns available now.
That's true.
But again, not very many important ones were used on Elevate's side either.
It could also be the fact that you're not really expecting this late game Cabrakan to do much to you, but yes, a late game Cabrakan will still do enough damage to any squishy target, such as a hunter like that, and I can guarantee you Arkkyl is going to be calculating that in the next team fight. Now that both of these members from Elevate and Dignitas have respawned, it's time to do the dance.
And I don't blame them for playing this patiently. They only get this one chance. They're not going to get to play each other again after this. It's just that 1 point that's up for grabs. So if they lose this team fight here, especially Dig, they could just be out of their chance at going to HRX.
No Numbers gets his ability interrupted from the on-kill out of Variety. Not going to be able to pancake flip the tier currently. Trying to get in position here is Elevate. They're still kind of baiting, but Dignitas can see that the Fire Giant hasn't been pulled, so there's no reason for them to overcommit quite yet.
And Dig had to be careful just for a few more seconds. Beads are coming back up right now for Zyrhoes. Beads about to come back up for Qvofred in about 20 seconds. That's when they can feel a little bit more comfortable in going into this engage, because just about everything is back online for Elevators. The shell's about to tick over now. Cherryo actually does get stunned out by Trixtank, but it's Trixtank who takes a little bit more poke than he wanted.
He's going to be able to get away. The bees are being spread around Dignitas. It's not too much compared to the early to mid game here, as it's very low tick damage. DeathPanter was able to push the mid wave a little bit, getting himself more farm, but sitting at almost 90,000 gold collectively as a team. That farm's not going to amount to much here.
DeathPanter now is starting to pull this Fire Giant. He recognizes if Dignitas don't come in, he can force this objective, force the hand of Team Dignitas. Already at half health now is the Fire Giant, but he's leashed it. Jermain goes up into the air, though, looking for something.
1, 2, it's going to be off the mark. He's trying to hit the backline with the snipes. That's the goal of Jermain. He's creating this disruption, like allowing Cherryo to go in, dropping the Suns now, but in the backline is Dardez blinking in.
Zyrhoes is the one that gets trapped, though, in the walls from Cherryo. Qvofred over on the left. Qvofred gone over on the left. The Supernova actually comes to the team fight, hitting No Numbers and Dardez. Big ultimate, and Trixtank goes with the Dragonic Corruption. Zyrhoes just rotating back out.
He's trying to get out of dodge, and he will do so, but not until Trixtank is
Big
sacrificed like a lamb. Arkkyl running away with Zyrhoes. Variety can only be a spectator as Elevate are getting Fire Giant. And look at these respawn timers. 50 seconds on Qo, 55 for Trixtank. That's enough time to get a Phoenix.
And this is a big fight here for Elevate now, with 5 members still rocking strong. Only 3 members to defend for Dignitas. They can start looking to push down these tier 2 towers, start looking to open up the base of Team Dignitas. Remember, these sieges have been a really hard point for the teams all land long totally, so trying to get this weakening going on early so they can move in a little bit later.
The holes from Dignitas are starting to reveal themselves. This Chaac jungle is just not providing them the presence that they need in the late game factor. No one from Dignitas here is going to be able to hold off on the right side. Phoenix, first one, Fire finally falling at the 44-minute mark.
No way for Dignitas to defend that one. Coming back to the tier 2 is Elevate. They do get the Phoenix closer to the Fire Giant, so Dig will still be able to possibly push up those Fire Minions and not have to worry about that too much. But now coming over to clear up the tier 2 and tier 1, which is still standing over in duo. Those are some healthy towers over in the duo lane, actually.
I like what DeathPanter did when he turned the corner around that tier 2 mid tower, was just spreading the bees next to Variety, because that puts him in combat, not allowing him to blink. And not only that, will also apply a little bit of a slow factor, making it more annoying to engage. Even though Dignitas had 3 members to try to defend that tier 2 tower, if Variety hits a really crucial 3-man blink fearless, which could happen at almost any given time, the follow-up from Zyrhoes could just melt those people.
And Variety has been on fire with those Fearlesses here so far. I feel like he's been getting 2 members, 3 members, it's critical people almost every time. Whether it's No Numbers and Dardez or Cherryo and DeathPanter, he's been killing it with these blinks.
This is Elevate's first game today here. Dignitas were able to warm up against Energy, and honestly, like, maybe you could say that they were demoralized from the loss from Energy, but this is still the reigning summer champions of Valencia. They went the distance against a rival, and they defeated them 3-2. And now it's Elevate that started from the bottom.
Yeah, and now they're here, Toli. Now they're in a position where they could possibly make it to HRX. Yes, they looked good against Obey, and instead of going, man, we were so close, we had our chance, Elevate appeared to have regrouped. They appear revitalized, ready to go up against Team Dignitas. Tier 2 tower over the left-hand side has fallen. This game, though, is not over by any means. Dignitas could definitely still make a defense here.
Elevate have just learned so much since their online performance, able to really create chaos and confusion against their opponents. Both Obey Alliance and now Team Dignitas are struggling against the true composition of Elevate's identity, this triple Guardian double Hunter that's been around the block. This is not a new strategy by any stretch of the imagination. It's been deployed way back in Season 1 and 2, and now Elevate, with Fire Giants still around their waist for another minute and 10 seconds, are looking to go in on their second Phoenix.
And this is what everyone wanted to see from Elevate, is over on the right side. Cherryo is actually looping in with Qvofred right behind. DeathPanter gets stunned out, but right on cue, Dardez with the shield. Minion wave is here, so now they can go in and look for it. Variety blinks in, but this time gets nobody, gets cataclysmed. Jermain looked for the shot onto Arkkyl, isn't able to get him, but actually gets a good damage on the Variety. Qvofred, Stormcall in the back, but actually it's the flip in from Trixtank.
He's forced to run away here. He needs to get out, but it's Qvofred diving the backline. Zyrhoes is going to be the first victim. DeathPanter credited with that one. Qvofred forced to go away, but the double Fearless Cherryo and No Numbers needs to back on out. Titan is going to take some poke from these fire minions.
That's right. Now they got to worry about the right-hand side and the left-hand side. Going on to Arkkyl. See you later, Arkkyl. He's been deleted. Phoenix on the left-hand side.
That's
down.
it.
Phoenix on the right-hand side. Got only 3 members left to defend. Elevate goes in to take a game of Team Dignitas. Elevate looking good. And Dignitas, the summer final champs, are 0-2.
They're 0-2. Now, granted, losing against Energy could be expected, right? 2-time world defending champions, but against Elevate have been looking so strong in Super Regionals, going the distance against Obey Alliance, taking them to 5 games and winning their first game out of group play.
And what's really impressive to me from this is the mental state of these Elevate players. We knew they were all individually talented, so I'm not so surprised to see them mechanically doing well. But after a rough, grueling 5-game set against Obey to win their first game in groups, Toli? Wow.
This, you could just tell the faces here of Dignitas. They need these next 3 wins, and they also need to hope for a little bit of fortune for their sides, because there could easily still be tiebreakers at the end of tomorrow.
And that's going to be very important there for Dignitas. You're right. Getting 3 wins, even then, as you said, is still hard to make it all the way through, especially with Energy looking as strong as they've looked so far. The bar is going to be really high, Toli.
That's right. 4 is the magic number if you want to guarantee your spot towards HRX from the group play. We could have 2 North American teams or 2 European teams, or 1-1 making it into HRX rather, and these 2 losses from Dignitas, they need to really just take a step backwards and see what works for them, because they cannot play into Elevate style.
Yeah, they can't allow Elevate to continue to dictate the pace. That's what the rest of group play are going to have to think about here too. But here we're just going to have a real quick moment, and then we'll get that desk ready for you.
Wow, Dignitas now 0-5 so far here at Super Regionals. Great stuff from Elevate. They take the game against Dig and really put Dig behind the 8 ball if they want to go to HRX. Welcome into the desk. I'm Aggro, joined by Luminosity's coach Quintosh and resident memer Polar Bear Mike.
Good afternoon, gamers.
There you go. That's why we have him on. That's the entire reason, more or less. Guys, okay, is it just as simple as Chaac jungle for Dignitas, Quinn?
No. Dignitas is playing differently the entire LAN. When we saw them play online and they came to LAN, we expect them. They play much better than they did. And in their set against Rival, they started doing some really good stuff online. Learned how to pressure mid lane, put it into a lead. And I feel like when they started losing with their strat against Obey, they thought they need to change it a little bit. Try something else, and that didn't work against Rival. They got out 3'd. And they're playing better in group stage than against Rival. But they're still missing something. I feel like this Dig team at LAN is just playing worse than they did online.
Do you feel the same, Mike?
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like they just either guessed wrong or they're not confident in the way they want to play the meta. And it's really surprising because I think for the entirety of the year, them and Obey were the pioneers of not just EU meta, but probably the entire meta across EU and NA. So it's really odd to see that.
Yeah, how much were you guys on Luminosity looking towards what Dignitas was doing during the online portion to see what you wanted to do?
I think Dig were the first team to start with Hunter in middle. So we tried a bit out, tried how to counter it. A lot of times we went with it because it gives you a lot of mid pressure and you can turn the game just based on that if you get good elite.
Right.
So we were really surprised Dig didn't do that. They're playing a lot better now. The Chaac jungle was not the issue, I think. Qvofred did really well. His rain dance just zoned a lot of the team fights. He just threw his axe, did decent damage, was able to create a huge zone area to like not get the tanks in because they had no initiation. It takes them a while, but they still couldn't really win the team fights.
Yeah, I feel like there were some team fights in particular. Variety hit some nice Blink Fearlesses that game. He looked much better in this one, for my money, than he had the rest of Super Regionals, but there just wasn't really enough follow-up, enough damage from the rest of Dignitas' roster to really follow up. It just really surprised me to see the Chaac whenever Ravin was still open and Ratatosker, 2 early game gods that can control team fights sort of similarly.
Yeah, I wasn't really feeling the Chaac, not because just I thought there were better options that are more consistent, more proactive. And against Elevate, you know exactly what they're going to do. They did the double Hunter, triple Guardian, and then they get to late game, and there's like a Chaac does nothing at that point.
Yeah. Right. In the fact that they let Elevate first pick the Cabrakan, were you surprised by that, Quintosh? Kind
of. But there's also only 2 bans.
Right.
We've seen Athena been banned against them because Cherryo, it's a similar style. You go in, you have initiation that's in a lot of situations even better than Cabrakan's. And I'm not sure if Cherryo plays online, but he does play really good Athena jungle. Yeah. And his team is definitely playing around him. So if he has set up, there's like a double taunt, triple taunt even in team fights, instead of, okay, maybe he can just kill someone. But with an Athena taunt, they have much more follow-up.
Right.
So it's real hard. Do you want Cabrakan? Do you want your team to be Athena taunted? They die either way.
Well, the issue with this is, and one of the reasons I picked Elevate to come out of this group stage is you'll notice against Obey, they were taking first side every single game. And when you're first side, Cherryo is getting one of Athena, Cabrakan, or RDO. Yep. You can't stop them. So they get their comp that they want every single time.
Right. I'm just saying that between the RTO and the Cabrakan, that I completely agree with you, Quintosh, that the Athena is something that you can't let them really get.
Yeah, I'd rather deal with the RDO for sure, I think. But
yeah, RTO was the easier one to put behind, and maybe Space Station will have taken a look at that and decide that that's the ban situation that they want to go for. Because Cherryo was killing it on this Cabrakan. I mean, he had one play around that Gold Fury where he has some incredible blink. I don't know what it is about Cherry at LAN, but this dude is just sick.
He is just a Lanimal. He just performs so well on every LAN. He goes from like 200 ping or whatever he's on to the 10. He gets to get his team fired up in comms. He's just so sick on LAN.
Just juking out Variety right there, and that was kind of everything Elevate does seems to revolve around him. But DeathPanter as well is a guy that has kind of flown under the radar for me as a big catalyst for this roster. Now we saw him struggle on some mages yesterday, but when he gets these hunters, he seems to really be a big part of what they can do offensively.
Yeah, he started off on, I think it was Burrito.
Not if he does stingers under Faf like that. I don't know about all that.
He started on Sanguine, I think, wasn't Burrito. Similar to how Arkkyl started on Sanguine, and then got picked up by the better team. And it's really hard. Arkkyl, when he played last Super Regionals, he was playing ADC for Sanguine. They didn't win. They went to the group stage and then lost. But you could still see he's a really good player. With DeathPanter, he's not in the solo lane or dual lane. It's more of solo lane sometimes.
Yeah.
You can still see, okay, Arkkyl's really good. With DeathPanter, if you don't play with him, if you don't see him in ranked or in scrims, it's hard to see, is this mid laner, is this why the team is winning? Or is the team just bored? Is he bad off the team? It's hard to see as a mid laner compared to AC.
So you have to be in the thick of things so much as a mid laner. And Mike, I just have to let you know that if you're going to be calling other people out during their highlight plays, next time you miss a Faf hammer, which is probably the next time you play Fafnir,
I missed 3
I'm
in
probably
the entire
gonna
game
have to call
of
you.
game 2.
Mike, if
Please
you could
do
just
not-
let me
please
finish
do
real
not
quick.
know-
Just
listen, if
let
you
me
could
finish
stop
my
talking,
thought
I was gonna finish
real
my
quick.
point
If you
on
could
that.
just let me finish off and take a look at standings real quick,
Okay,
because that's what the
okay,
people
okay, sorry
need to
about
see. Unbelievable that I have to work with this up on this desk. Energy, they've played 2, they've won 2. Elevate has actually won their game up against Dignitas. Apologies for that. The point in the wrong column there. And they're trying to make themselves 2-0 so far today as well. And they've got Space Station up next.